What I'd like to do is we're going to play a video as part of our speaker introduction, and then Steve is going to come up and introduce our keynote speaker for the day. So I'd like to turn the podium over to Steve this time.
Hey, have you paid attention to what's on TV? They're having out-of-body experiences. And again, rewind now, we had come to faith a couple of years before, and we're really growing spiritually. So spiritual things were a big deal. This was just a little bit of, it was just weird to us, okay? It was just kind of goofy to us. And so I said, out-of-body experience. I said, you know, they need to have an out-of-Bible experience. I said, because that's been our ultimate experience since we came to Clemson. And he said, yeah, our out-of-Bible experience. I said, OOBE, an OOBE. That's what they need to have. That's what we've had, and OOBE has been our ultimate experience. So we coined the word, and again, didn't have a whole lot of time left on campus, but if you were going to skip class and go to Whitewater Falls, which I wouldn't recommend to my children or anybody else that might see this that are still students, but if you were, then you could say that's an OOBE day. He goes, hey man, I'm not having any OOBE days right now. And that made me sad. You know, I was like, I'm sorry. Like, what can I do? He goes, I don't know. Let's just keep talking and praying, and maybe God's showing me to do something else. Because I was enjoying teaching and coaching. And this went on for a few months, and Mike goes, he calls me again one day. He said, hey, do you want to do something together? I'm like, yeah, like, you know, go to the lake, or what do you mean, go to the beach? He goes, no, I mean, seriously, do something together. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I'd love to do something with you. And we both had recognized we were entrepreneurs at heart. So we both had this itch, I think, to try to create and do something. On April 29th, 1994, Mike called me and said, hey, I incorporated us.
I remember the day we both put in our resignations. We were both on the phone. We both prayed about it. He went in and turned in his resignation at the same time I did. Tom had found us an old auto body shop. It had a one-car garage and a small little office.
Nice.
It was brutal. And at that point, Tom and I were like, I guess we need somebody to help us with our financing and our accounting. So Tom and I got in the car, drove to Clemson, to the Small Business Development Center that was at Serene at the time. And Becky Hobart, who was the director of the Small Business Development Center, we walked in there with a yellow legal pad. She goes, can I look at your financial statements and your balance sheet? We walked in there with a yellow legal pad and handed it and said, we need you to help us. And really, the Clemson Small Business Development Office really wrapped their arms around us and helped us put together a strong financial model around our business. But one of the key things that we always tell them, and I think this is the common denominators of entrepreneurs that actually make it, and that's perseverance. And most entrepreneurs get started, and the first hurdles or bumps in the road or the real difficulties that happen during that process and that journey, people give up. They throw in the towel. And so I'm thankful that I have a partner. I don't know how people do sole proprietorships or they go at it alone, but for me, it was just a massive blessing because it was us. If I was down, he was up. If he was down, I could lift him up. And we're always trying to find ways to engage with Clemson. Whether it's volunteering our time to speak to students, whether it's engaging in some of the university incentives, you know, some of the initiatives, whether academically or athletically.
The tour guides are the face of Clemson. That's important to us.
And you know, just to be able to tell people when they ask us about our clothing that someone loved Clemson enough, they were alumni of Clemson, they wanted to give back to our school and thank us for what we do.
The most important part of our role is just showing what it's like to be a student here, how great it is, the Clemson family, what we sell, our school and all the time. Showing our Clemson experience to prospective families is unbelievable, and you can't find that experience online just looking for facts or anything like that. You really have to come to campus and get a feel for it. And it really just symbolizes, because all the tour guides have everything, and it symbolizes that we're one, and that's we're one Clemson family, which is so awesome. And when people see that on tours, we get compliments all the time about how professional our tour guides look and how great they are. One of my mottos is you look good, you feel good, you tour good. So that's definitely something that I have grown to appreciate, especially having our new uniforms.
Every time that we learn something new or we have an update on our information, it just makes me that much more proud to see what our university is doing and how we're so involved in a lot of different aspects. We are a huge engineering school, but we're also huge in agriculture and architecture and all these kinds of things. So we're definitely a school where everyone's going to find something to be a part of. I definitely think our uniforms just help us to come together. Like Taylor was saying, we're all very, very different, very diverse in our organization, but when we all have that same polo on, we all know that we're here for that one reason, and that it's to share our love for the school and to make people want to come here and be part of our family too. So our uniforms just kind of help that. They let us shine bright, stand out on campus.
We really love Clemson. We do, and believe that it's a worthy investment and time. It's not like we're getting behind a school that's struggling. We're part of something special.
Clemson has remained strong because of its strong alumni, and the fact that the university places a strong emphasis of taking care of its alumni. Therefore, the alumni feel it's their responsibility to help take care of the university, and that's something that we always, ever since we graduated, even if it was such a small way, we've been supportive of the university even when we didn't have anything. We realized that adds up. So if everybody participates, it's the big economies of scale that really help create some big movement.
It's going to take a village, in a sense, to make Clemson great.
All right, well, before the Clemson grad, I'm glad the way that video ended. I like that a lot. So, in addition to being a local Chick-fil-A franchisee, that makes me a customer of OOBE. So I might be the only person in the room today wearing an OOBE tie. These guys from OOBE didn't wear their own ties today. So about 5 days a week, you'll see me sporting a Chick-fil-A tie. It's been designed by OOBE, and we're proud of that partnership. This one happens to have the subtle icon C woven right into the fabric. And so great job, guys. We appreciate everything y'all do for us. I'm going to rattle off a list of brands because I don't know if Tom's going to do that. And that's important for you to know because OOBE is a Greenville-based success story. But listen to these brands that they're partnering with or have partnered with. Not only Chick-fil-A, but brands like Fila, Schlesinger, Merrill Footwear, Wolverine, the PGA Tour, Disney, BMW, YMCA, Hendrick Automotive, Krispy Kreme, and Food Line. So that's quite an accomplishment for a company that's still relatively young. So what a great job OOBE is doing, and the fact that they're locally based just makes us all proud. If you ever go in their offices, I love the way they have tied into the textile heritage of our area. And so I was actually on a trip with a friend up in North Greenville at a lumber mill, and I said, what are we doing today? Because I was just kind of along for the ride. And he said, well, every bit of lumber that I picked for this next project has to come from an old textile mill. And he said, that's just the owner's specifications for this project. And so at the end of that trip, I realized we were shopping for OOBE's new offices for the upfit. And so it's just great. It's a great space if you ever have a chance to get down there and see it. They've done a great job. So in addition to their success, I mentioned that they're part of the fabric of the Greenville community. And so I've heard this story in various iterations, maybe 4 or 5 times now, but I still put today's event on my calendar. And so that's how quintessentially and encouraging this story is, to, especially to people that have an entrepreneurial bent, just to see what Mike and Tom have been able to do with their team. And so Tom is very tied into Greenville. He's a Powdersville native, a Clemson grad, as you know. He started out as a teacher, coach, guidance counselor in local high schools. He and his wife, Allison, even were part of the small group that started Grace Church back in 1995. He's been a loyal supporter and leader with Palmetto Boys State for almost 3 decades, which is a fantastic organization and effort. And so it's a pleasure to introduce Tom Merritt to speak to you this morning.
This is probably a good time for us to go home. I want to thank y'all for a chance to be with you this morning. First, let me just make a disclaimer. This is the second time that I've seen that video of Mike and me up front. And the first time I saw it, we were in Atlanta at a Clemson event. And the only thing I could think the entire time that I was watching was, how did Gomer Pyle do a voice dub for me? And why didn't they use my real voice? And then I realized, oh my gosh, that's the way I sound. And so it's something real sobering when they do a video and you have to listen to yourself. And if that's ever happened to you, it's not great. But I am grateful. I'm grateful for Clemson doing that, and I want you to know that we're excited to be a part of what Clemson's doing. But for those of you who are Gamecocks in the room, I'm gonna, Stephen mentioned that I'm on Palmetto Boys State staff, and one of my dear friends, Jamie Bennett, who's a local businessman here, he and I have been doing that 30 years. It's a long time, Jamie. And we get a chance to hear a lot of local politicians during the week when we're working with the kids. And I heard Bakari Sellers say last year in a Q&A when it was a pretty raucous crowd of 950 to 1,000 rising senior boys from South Carolina. And so, you know, we're a pretty bipartisan state. No offense to the Furman, Wofford, Citadel, and the rest of the folks here. But as you can imagine, those seniors were going back and forth, and Bakari's as smooth as they come, and a Carolina grad. And as the sound went down of the crowd, he just looked and he goes, no, I mean, Clemson's a good school, he said, but realize that there are kids starting kindergarten this year who've never seen Clemson beat Carolina. And everybody's like, oh. And all the staff guys wearing Clemson rings were like, oh, dang. And we're like, cut his mic. You know, he'll never be lieutenant governor if we can help it. So yes, I'm tired as a Clemson man of eating humble pie. Yes, I'm waiting, and now I'm starting to wonder, is this year the year that's going to turn? But just so you know, I'm not giving lip service to win the crowd over this morning. I thought it would be a great chance to show that I really am above all that sometimes. Those of you who know me will probably doubt that statement. But a dear friend of mine, guy was with Ernst & Young in Greenville for years, Mike Chabero, just wrote a book about a Gamecock, and I'm going to hold it up here so that to prove to you I am not a hater most days. And Steve Wadiak is a legend, and Mike Chabero just published this, and so you Carolina faithful, you should be proud. And Mike's an elder at my church, and I respect him. If I would let a Gamecock lead me spiritually, then that ought to let you know where I am in the grand spectrum. But thanks again, Stephen, for that introduction. Thank you to Tripp, the Chamber, the sponsors. This is a privilege. Anytime we get to tell our story about OOBE, it is a privilege because we believe God has given us a unique story just like He's given you one. And story's powerful. And if you do get to come to our office, and I hope you do at some point, we can help you in any way, or just come visit, you'll see that we have integrated story and our story and what God's done in our business over 20 years in a unique way to hopefully help us communicate what we want to do. But before I tell you a little bit more about our story and play off of the video, which helps frame it up, since Mike and I like to do this kind of thing together a lot of times, I want to do one thing, and I'm going to ask the folks that I'm about to introduce to bear with me, and for you to recognize that without these folks and others like them, there would have been no reason for you to invite me to come speak to you this morning, because OOBE would not be making it. We would not be what people term as successful in business. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we define that. But if you will endure me, I would like for our OOBE folks that are here at the table to please stand up. This is just a few of the folks. It might take Lib a little bit longer to stand up. So if you would, and then I would like for Gray Rock Financial Management back here, Scott Wigington, Scott Carr, Mickey, and Lindsay, would you please stand up? I'm going to talk a little bit about them. These folks are critical to our business, and I just want you to give them a hand because they're going to be a part of the story that I'm about to tell. So. We've grown a good bit over the last couple of years, and so the folks that are at the OOBE table in Gray Rock represent one point that I'm going to try to make here in just a minute, is that we could not be successful without people coming to be a part of our story. Now, you say, well, that's obvious in business because you got to have customers, and that's true. But what Mike and I consider the greatest blessing for us is not the business opportunity, though Stephen represents a huge blessing in Chick-fil-A that I'll talk about. And clients are important, and having great clients is key to any business. But when folks like Grey Rock, they are not technically part of OOBE, but they run their business in a way that if you were ever in a meeting with us for financial planning, accounting, Scott is our CFO, you would not know that they weren't on the OOBE payroll. And so that is the heart of the story of the blessing of OOBE over the last 20 years. You heard a little bit about how we got started. I was teaching school and coaching. Mike was working for Sealand up in Charlotte. Mike's from Puerto Rico originally. His family moved to North Augusta when he was young. I'm from Powdersville, grew up in Powdersville, still live in Powdersville. So I went all the way up north to Greer to coach, and then it was too cold, so we came back south to easily. But it has been a story for us that got knitted together around Clemson and around the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so there's people and events, and there's a spiritual side to our story. So I don't want to wear you out with that part. So I'm going to ask for a little grace from you this morning. This isn't me trying to evangelize Greenville Chamber. This is just me telling our story in a way that I hope is authentic and makes sense, because if I try to tell it unlike that, it's going to be disjointed and fractured, and it won't make any sense. So please don't take the lacing of, and the use when I talk about what God has done not lightly. It's an integral part of who we are still, and always has been. And so I'm going to try to give as much honor as I can. There's been as Stephen said, 20 years back in April, we celebrated our corporate anniversary, April 29th. And it's a big time for us. We did a tour of all of our old facilities and just really could give visual credence to God's hand and His favor through the years. We started in the outdoor industry, and that means we actually had an indoor office, but we were selling to people in the outdoor industry. Now, I will tell you this, our first office, an auto body shop, when we would raise the door, probably wasn't far from just being an outdoor office. It was very humble, as we laugh about in the video. It was a dump, but we cleaned it up, and it served us well. And so we were real thankful for that. And if you come to our office today, you'll see that we really do believe that that's the beginning of where God started dealing with us with a lot of our mistakes that we made then, and the learning curve, because Mike was in the shipping business, and I was an English teacher and a guidance counselor and a football and basketball coach. So you can see we were perfectly suited to start an apparel company. And that's about as much sense as I can make out of it for you this morning. But what we've learned as we gave that tour, and not just the blessing of our story and how God has sustained us in spite of us, that each one was a marker along the way that allowed us to fail and then succeed, and for us to be humbled and then to be raised up. And so we want our story to continue, as it's being added to continue to have the heart that it began, where we were just going to trust each other. We were going to go hard. As Mike said, when one was up, the other was down. So community. We talk about the OOBE family a lot. That's very important to us. I'm terrible at separating who I am personally from business, and don't even try. And so when I talk about my faith or my family or my OOBE family, it's just really who we are. And so whether it's what Mike has learned at Brookwood or I've learned at Grace Church, and how we apply that, and what we learn through business, or what I learned as a husband, as a father, all this kind of gets tumbled around to be a part of the collective sum of who we are as an OOBE family. Now, the interesting thing is, it started in the auto body shop with just Mike and me. Now, if you come to our office, they hired 4 people while I was on vacation. And I don't say that lightly. I'd interviewed 3 of them, but I just said, I don't know if this is a testimony or an indictment to my leadership that I'm gone and you hire people, and we actually have the best months we had had. And so I just stand here. That's why they need to be up here beside me, because there's so much good that's going on, because people that know things that I don't know are bringing their gifts and talents to the table. And that's essentially the story of OOBE. Mike and I flipped a coin in that auto body shop in 1995 after I had resigned from Easley High School and he resigned from Sealand, because we both felt like we were wired up to be salesmen. But we realized we couldn't keep going to the post office together every day, and we ate lunch every day together. We didn't have anything really to do. We didn't know what we were doing, and so we would just go everywhere together. I think Mike looked at me one day, he goes, I think we've got to stop going everywhere together. There's two of us, and if we want to get paid, we're going to have to divide and conquer. So we flipped a coin, and he said, okay, heads will be design and manufacturing. Tails will be sales and operations. I said, fair enough. He said, you call it in the air. And he flipped the coin, and I called tails, and it was tails, and I ended up with sales and operation. He ended up with design and manufacturing. And so that's how we still function today as co-CEOs in a general sense. So if you come and look at our org chart, the best we can figure, it still flows up fairly much like that. That's worked well for us. We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about who we are and who we aren't. And so that's what I want to share a little bit with you this morning and tell you about some things. You've heard a little bit about where we've been. You kind of know now. Stephen gave you a list of some folks that we have been blessed to serve as clients. So that's kind of where we are, but you're always going somewhere, right? Your business is always going somewhere. And so as we look and as we try to create vision, which is a big part of my role and that I prayerfully take seriously, that's what we're trying to do. Where are we headed, okay? So I want to just hit on a couple of things this morning. We have just a few minutes, and I should have us out of here on time. Some things that we have realized are really important for business. And most of you in here are more seasoned or run your business as well or better than we do. So what I'm going to tell you it's not revolutionary, it's not revelatory in the sense that you've never heard it. You may use this language a different way in your business, but in order for us to connect this morning from a Greenville business community, just bear with me for a second and let me tell you how OOBE's family approaches what we're trying to do in the marketplace. First of all, we know we have to be stable. We know that stability is huge for us. We haven't always been a stable company, all right? In the auto body shop, there was a lot of instability, and that was 20 years ago, and for the first 10 years, the years I call the nonprofit years, without 501c3 status, okay? So, you know, I would tell you that those were the years where we're trying to figure this thing out. We would try and retail to design and make things that we thought people would want and then go see if they would buy it and sell it to them. And that worked well. It helped us survive. Then we moved into corporate apparel for a season, much like a lot of you use in your company to promote your business, and that's still a part of our business model today. Well, then we would build things that we knew people wanted or they needed, and yet we went and built a bunch and then hoped that they would buy it. And that wasn't a very good strategy either. There wasn't a lot of stability in that, but we learned a lot through that. And then God opened a door about 2004. We had an opportunity to do business with Chick-fil-A. And I can't get into that entire story today. That's a you got to come see us story, or we've got to go to lunch story, and you need Mike in the room to help tell it. But that's just a wonderful testimony of how sometimes you just get a shot at something and you go for broke. You know, there's a treasure hidden in a field, and you go sell all you have and you buy that field. And we really said we're going to retool our business model to go after this thing that could be really special. And the net of that is we were entrusted with the Chick-fil-A uniform business, which we coined team style because they use team members. That is the employees at Chick-fil-A are team members. So team style began under we birthed that for them. And so then that was all we were about for about 2 years, trying to figure out how to execute this big thing we've been entrusted with. And it was a wonderfully stressful time, and we made it. And we got to a point where there was some stability. And then I looked around one day and I said, man, I wonder if we're a one-hit wonder. I wonder if we're going to be able to replicate this. And you start getting anxious. You get fearful. Is this it? Are we one and done? And so then we had to start thinking differently. And so as you think differently, then obviously your actions are going to follow and be different. And so it led us to the first time of really diving into the second thing that is big for OOBE is, are we scalable? Can we take what we're doing, and if other people like it or if other people want it, can we replicate this in a healthy way for us and a healthy way for the current clients and the new client? All right, so that's the second big thing that we realize that if we want to continue to do this well and other people are going to be attracted, are we scalable? And so that there's a term that we're starting to implement, and that required some disciplined dreaming. Disciplined dreaming, Mike and I were both dreamers, so the dreaming part was easy. We both dreamt way more than we should have sometimes, and we got ahead of ourselves. But to be disciplined in our dreaming meant that we were going to count the cost of building the tower before we began. And that's what a lot of the folks at OOBE today represent, is as we're trying to build what God's entrusted us through new clients, we have to hire new subject matter experts. We're having to bring in people that I don't even know what John Schrader does when he goes to work. But I know it's vitally important, and he just budgeted a lot of money for our ERP system and for our web platform interface. And it scares me and it excites me all at the same time. And so I think at that point I realized that in order to be scalable and to have disciplined dreaming, we really need to have a plan. And we have some great folks at OOBE right now who are really good planners. And I told you before that I have a hard time separating the personal from the business. And so I want to tell you that when I was growing up, I was playing football with a guy that ended up being one of my best friends all the way through school. We're still friends today. So I guess been friends 40 years. When we were 6, he was a lot faster than I was. He was a lot faster than everybody else on the football field. So we put him at tailback and gave him the football every play, and he just outran everybody, and we scored touchdowns, and we went undefeated. And it was awesome, especially when you're 6, because you got a trophy. And really, I'm just like, the only reason we're really great is because we give Wendell the football, and he just goes fast and beats everybody. All right? Then we got into high school. He was still way faster than me and still faster than most anybody else we ever met. So I was playing on defense, he's playing on offense, but during drills, we would have to go against each other in tackling drills. So what I thought was, if I could tackle him, I can probably tackle anybody that we play against and that we come up against from other teams, because he's faster than anybody else I know. So that was my plan. And so every day in drill, we would line up, and when I would see where he was, if he was third in line, then I would back up to be third in line. Okay? Seems crazy, because who wants to look bad in drills? But I didn't really care about looking bad in drills. I cared about looking bad on Friday night in the game in front of my girlfriend and my parents and all the people in Powdersville, because that's the center of the universe, of course, and everything matters, right? Or, you go somewhere like Walhalla, okay? Whole world revolves around a Wren Walhalla football game, right? But that was my plan. In practice, I was going to go against the best that I knew. So when it got game time, I would be ready for hopefully most anything and anybody. And that served me well. So I was telling Wendell this story the other day. We went to lunch because we were just talking about life. Because you see, at the beginning of the summer, he lost his wife to cancer. It was very difficult for him and for all of us. And he looked at me, he said, Tom, he said, we had a lot of plans. And now I got to come up with new plans. And I said, man, hadn't thought about that. I was just thinking about your kids. He's got a son playing football at South Carolina now. He's got a daughter in high school. This guy's my age. Plans are changing. It's tough on him. Everything that he thought he was going to do growing old, not going to do. Not with Atlanta. So that was a sit-back moment. And as I started thinking about what I wanted to share with you this morning, I realized that I could give you all these great pieces of wisdom and plans that OOBE has, but everything's uncertain. And we've got a bunch of people that just prayerfully go in with a plan, and then we have to adjust. And you know, that's what business is about. And if you want to maintain your business, you've got to be able to take a good plan and adjust it. We pulled out of a really important RFP last year, or earlier this year, because we thought it was going to be our demise if we won it. Now you can think that that's arrogant to think we're going to win it, but last year we grew so much. Every time we went after a significant account, thank the Lord, we won it. And that's why people are coming on board so fast, because we've got to be scalable to remain stable. And so our plans are changing. And we've got plans today, and they'll be different on Monday. And these folks will be a big part of that. So personally, that's what God's teaching me. Business, that's what God's teaching me. So staff, IT, procedures, systems, all that. Make great plans. That's what Grey Rock helps us do. How are we going to pay for that plan? Then the last thing we've realized, not only you have to be stable, you have to be scalable if you want to grow. But we've realized that being sustainable is really what we're after. Because we like what we do, we like where we work, we like who we work with. We like going to work together and servicing our customers like Stephen Bryant, Chick-fil-A. We want to sustain that. Now, sustainability, don't get confused. Yeah, we're trying to use less paper, and I'd love to say because I'm Mr. Green, but save money. So whether it's about the environment or about the bottom line, sustainability is important. I'm talking about sustenance of your business and what you're trying to create. All right? That's where culture, to me, comes in so huge. And what we're trying to build here is a culture of stewardship. A culture of stewardship means just what we say all the time. This really doesn't belong to us. We're caretakers. If I get something, a client, an opportunity to present, a company meeting, if that is something that I get to take care of, I don't really own that moment. I don't really own this business. I've never owned more than 50% of OOBE. Since the day those two knuckleheads started, 50% is all I've ever had. And so I've never thought this is all mine. And so there's been a healthy gut check for us in that regard that God has given us. So when we look at our culture, we look at our core values. And I'm just going to give them to you briefly because these change. We just changed our core values. Integrity, creativity, service, quality, faith, and excellence. And we'll change them again if our core values need changing because of the growth in order for us to be sustainable. So I'm going to leave you with this, that sustainability as a company, I believe, especially for you who are leading in your company, is tied directly to your sustainability personally. And so, bear with me for a second. I used to say you get what you pay for when nobody paid to come hear me speak. Now, some of you paid $12, you got a $12 breakfast. Those of you that paid $25, hit the buffet twice, and I'll give you $1 on the way out the door. Here's what I think. I think it's really simple. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly. What do you mean by that? Now, I didn't come up with this, and so if you want to know the source of this, see me later. But I think you need to do justly, even when it costs you, and it will cost you in business to do the right thing, to do right. Then you need to love mercy, even when your emotions betray you, because your emotions are going to betray you. You're not going to feel like being merciful, and let's face it, not one of us in business hadn't needed mercy or had to give mercy. Because somebody always owes you, and you always owe someone. And then I think the last thing is walk humbly, even when your pride and your ego are just naturally opposed to that. And so for us, for me, if I can do that at home, at work, then OOBE has a better chance with me in the mix of being successful. And so we try to communicate effectively, and we try to reinforce our values, and we believe that can help keep us stable, It will allow us to continue to be scalable, and then sustainability hopefully will be a product of that. So again, let me finish with the way I started, which is thanking you for a chance to share. And I hope that the last third of 2014 is your best third of the year. I hope you achieve a lot of your goals, and that God blesses you in a way that you can set some new goals for 2015 that will make you even a better company, better organization, better ministry, better practice. And of course, if there's anything that OOBE can do to help you in that, then we'd be humbled at the opportunity. So thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
Where did the name come from?
Get asked that a lot. Thank you. We touched on it a little bit. It's hard to hear in the video. It was during our FCA years at Clemson. Mike and I actually both came to faith, to a Christian faith, through the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so one night we were at the lake watching Dionne Warwick's Psychic Hotline, and they were having out-of-body experiences, and they were talking about that. We thought it was kind of hokey, and that's when I said, well, they need to have an out-of-Bible experience, because that's been what's been life-changing for us. And he goes, yeah, out-of-Bible experience. And so I was an English major, and I love puns and cheesy humor and wordplay. And so OOBE was an acronym. We don't market it as an acronym, but that's the genesis of the term. And so that's really how our faith and whether this thing made it or not really was going to be a part of what we were trying to do. And that's it. Thank you.
I have more of a comment. I'm a beneficiary in a career company because my husband works at BMW, and now he wears your stuff, and I'm much happier. I'm not sure for what, but I'm just a real happy beneficiary, even though I'm not doing it.
Well, bless you. Because if Mama's happy, everybody's happy, right? Yeah, we're very grateful for BMW, and that's been a long time coming. And for them to trust us has been a huge blessing this year. So thank you for saying that.
That's right. We used to tagline, make you wives happy.
Yeah, mamas and wives happy.
Next question.
Steve,
Back in the corner.
Tom, what is the future in terms of your product mix? Can you share any vision on that?
Yes, great question. We ask that question ourselves a lot of times. I touched on it a minute ago, but for time's sake, I didn't go too deeply into it. Starting as a retail brand in outdoor, we always had a desire to have a retail flair and a retail brand. And then when we transitioned through those middle years from promo into doing what we don't call the uniform business, we call it large-scale strategic branded apparel. And so strategic branded apparel is what we want to be, strategic to the client. And so our business focus has gone from building product around our label and our brand to being a brand that supports other people's brands like Chick-fil-A and BMW. And so sometimes our brand will be on the outside, tour guides at Clemson, that will be obvious because that's a small deal that we've done where it's out of our off-the-shelf product. But we're going to continue to look for those key market leaders. Our business plan is if you're in the top 3 in a business sector, whether it's travel, manufacturing, whatever, grocery, we have the top in quick service, fast casual food. We know that. So we're going to continue to try to go after those clients. But there is a desire to also bring along our brand in whatever way God opens those doors. Because we feel like that, and I think this to your point, that if we can continue to build clothes that are great for people within their strategic branded apparel that they use in the workforce every day, that supports an affinity and a confidence in our own OOBE label. And so that's how we'll approach it.
This question right here.
Oh, yes, so do you think a little bit about manufacturing? Are you doing something in the United States, offshore? How are you doing that?
Yeah, that's bittersweet for us. That's a good question. Mike, as I told you, handles design production. Most everything we do is offshore and for cost purposes. When we started, that was a hard lesson for us to learn the 5 years. And that's why we work so hard to try to tie our story back into Greenville Textiles, South Carolina, USA Textiles, even though we're telling a story of what was and what we hope can be again. To be competitive in the marketplace, we do a lot of manufacturing in Central America and the Pacific Rim. We have offices overseas that have wonderful people that are nationals, and so that connects the OOBE family globally. And so we're thankful for that. I don't want to lament the fact that we use overseas manufacturing, because it's just part of our business paradigm out of necessity to deliver the products and services at the value and the price that we have to be competitive. So it's connected us globally. We would love to see some of that be able to come back onshore and you know, other than just with the military, which is the Berry Amendment, the military goods, and any government issued is about all that's left on a large scale, sadly, except for raw goods. So that's a big thing where we hope we can be a part of.
Next question, right here.
You talked a little bit about or a lot about your people. Can you talk to us about recruiting for any finance grant?
Well, we have a couple agencies in town that help us. You know, we're highly relational, and so whenever we know that we have a need coming up, and we, like the 4 people that I mentioned, I quipped that they hired while I was gone, I knew obviously those were coming on board. We've got another 4 or 5 people in critical areas that we need. And so we just try to put the word out. People understand our culture, they understand what we're about, our core values of excellence, creativity, quality. So whether it's in IT, or whether it's in creative, or whether it's in program management or apparel design, we use all, no holds barred. We take all resumes, and we try to do all the interviewing ourselves. If it's on the financial side, Grey Rock's really critical in that. And so we're connectors.
Question right back here. I don't want to bring everyone down, but during those first 5 years, there had to be some really dark days. Days that you didn't really make it, you get off the market.
You talking about last week or in the first 5 years? Well, Clark, that's a great question. I appreciate you asking. I'll try not to make the answer too long. Here's the thing. It would have been dark if we didn't have the relationship that we described in that video. And if we didn't have a faith that our value and our significance wasn't in whether OOBE made it or not. I mean, we've just been surrounded by great people. We live in a great community of Greenville, a great community in our churches. We have healthy families. There was a lot more things that we were hanging our hat on to whether the business was going to make it. But it was an important goal for us. And so I will tell you, I'm glad I didn't do it alone. I really believe in the power of community, and that's probably how we made it through the days. And we moonlighted. We striped parking lots and landscaped and did whatever it took, because we had babies. You know, it's not like they would just not eat until we figured out a way to make money. You know, you can only go over to Mama's house for so long and hit up for a meal before Daddy starts going, "What are you doing?" You know, so you send the grandkids and you don't go. You know, no, but it was tough, and quite frankly, I described to you when we transitioned from retail in a clunky way, when we transitioned into large scale uniforms, the large scale strategic apparel. Chick-fil-A, that was a turning point. We became a different company. And so we had to be willing to change. And we don't have any dark days. We've got days that were definitely not profitable and definitely more difficult. We travel a lot, we worked hard. We got people that travel a lot and work hard right now. So it's been part of the DNA.
Question in the back.
Growth is great, but growth is challenging. And it seems like a constant in your business, Tom, is the culture that you've built internally in your own team. And it's especially challenging, it seems, to maintain that culture as you grow. Can you comment about strategic initiatives or things that you've done, some best practices even, that y'all have done to maintain your culture? I know some people who work for your company, they're absolutely phenomenal, and I would just love to hear your perspective on that.
I appreciate it. I don't know who you're talking about, but I would agree that they're phenomenal. No, that's a good question. Thanks. That's been difficult as you grow. We called them OOBE Fridays early on, and it was fine as long as you could get everybody into cab of a pickup truck or into one Explorer, we would go do something fun on a Friday afternoon, whether that was go paddling or horseback riding, and then as it gets bigger and you don't have a lot of resource, but you have a lot more people, you have to figure out new ways to do it. And so we try to build in fun. The coolest thing for me is when I know that I've always thought that OOBE was about something bigger than Mike and me, and that comes from what we believe personally. But now, when I know most of our really good ideas don't come from Mike and me. And so most of our fun is being generated from folks that work at OOBE that are not Tom and Mike. Hugely rewarding from the roles that we have now in leadership, that people are creating opportunity to connect, to serve. We have our motto inside is love and serve. We want to love people, serve people, and use apparel to do it. And so by loving on each other, there's some downtime and some fun events, but lunch and serve, to not be so selfish sometimes where we're just having fun, is we trying to go to lunch and try to do things in the community that we can do as an outreach. And one of the things I'm working on is how do you build that in to the benefits package for employees. And that's what Scott and I spend a lot of time talking about, what the future holds as we're growing, the challenges of being over 50 people, just from a compliance standpoint, much less from a culture building standpoint. So we are having to be real intentional. The Christmas party can't take place in the same place that it used to. Still got to have one. Everybody hates you.
Now, who's going to get the last question? Right over here.
Well, Tom, I'm with Pattersville as well, so I appreciate all that you do in the community of Pattersville. But I also wanted to extend an appreciation and thanks to your staff. Here, I'm at Center for Developmental Services, and the children that we serve are the special needs. And your staff just did an amazing job at Christmas. They came in, turned our library into a gingerbread house. It was just amazing. You've got a lot of talent, and you really have that culture, and I just want to applaud you for that.
Thank you.
I think you better than the last question.
Yeah. I know some of you got tea time, some of you got to go to work. The smart ones figured out a way to do both at the same time. So I'll be done. Let y'all go.
What I'd like to do before we cut this
Thank you.
enormous round of applause is, as is our tradition, we have a copy of a book written by John Wayne and Mayor Knox wife called Realizing the Greenfield Life, which is Tom, thank you so much for sharing your insight.
Thank you, Steve.